Hey everyone, and welcome back to the 5 p.m. podcast. I'm Dan, your resident political enthusiast, always digging into the details.
And I'm Tina, here to keep Dan from getting times lost in the weeds, and to ask the questions you're probably all thinking. We've got a fascinating topic today, straight from the world of international trade.
Oh, this is good stuff, Tina. We're talking about Canada's big push to diversify its trade. And they're looking east, specifically, to the ASEAN countries.
ASEAN, for those who aren't familiar, is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Think countries like Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, a real economic powerhouse these days.
Exactly. And Canada is trying to get a free trade agreement, or FTA, with them. It's called the ASEAN-Canada FTA, or ACAFTA. The goal? To wrap up negotiations by the end of 2025. Ambitious, right?
It is! And it makes sense, you know? Canada's been pretty reliant on the US and China for trade, and this is part of their Indo-Pacific Strategy, basically, spreading their economic bets.
Precisely. And we're not talking small potatoes here. The projections are for an asterisk significant times increase in Canada's GDP. We're talking billions, by tapping into those ASEAN markets by 2030.
Okay, so bigger markets, more opportunities. But what are the asterisk-specific times areas where Canadian businesses are hoping to, make a splash?
Well, digital services is a big one. Think cloud computing. Data services, Southeast Asia is a rapidly growing market for that kind of thing there. They're estimating a $12 billion cloud computing market.
Wow. So lots of potential, but I imagine these negotiations aren't exactly a walk in the park. What are some of the sticking points?
You're right, they're not. We're talking about things like tariff reductions. Getting rid of those extra costs on goods, and then there's rules of origin. Basically, figuring out what counts as a Canadian product or an ASEAN product. It gets complicated, fast.
And I saw that Thailand is playing a pretty big role in all of this, right? They're kind of leading the charge for ASEAN.
They are. Thailand is a key player. They hosted some crucial negotiation rounds recently, and their trade with Canada is already substantial. We're talking almost $3 billion in just the first 11 months of 2024.
That's significant. So Thailand's got a lot riding on this too.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the big numbers. We're talking about specific products too, like Thai auto parts and steel exports to Canada are up, but their seafood exports are down. These FTAs affect real industries, real people.
Right. And it's interesting to compare this ASEAN-Canada FTA, the ACAFTA, with other trade deals like the CPTPP, the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. That's another big one.
Oh yeah. The ACAFTA is actually aiming to go further times than the CPTPP in some areas, particularly when it comes to services and investments. It's kind of like they're trying to set a new, higher standard.
So if they pull it off, it could be a bigger deal for Canadian businesses wanting to expand into that part of the world.
Exactly. But there are always challenges. Things like agricultural tariffs. How much it costs to import things like Thai rice. Those can be really sensitive issues.
And it's not just about tariffs, right? It is also about making regulations and the standards consistent?
Right. Streamlining those. It's about making it easier for businesses to operate in both regions. For instance, we were reviewing documents suggesting they want easier rules for 5,612 products.
So we've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about Canada's goals, the potential benefits, the challenges. What's the big takeaway here, Dan?
I think the big takeaway is that this is a major effort by Canada to reshape its trade relationships. It's about looking beyond the usual partners and tapping into the growth of Southeast Asia. If it works, it could mean big things for the Canadian economy and for specific industries like digital services. And it's all happening pretty fast. They want to get this done by the end of 2025.
It'll be fascinating to see how it all unfolds. Thanks for breaking it down for us, Dan. And thanks to all of you for listening to the 5 p.m. podcast. We'll be back next week with another deep dive into the world of, well, you'll have to tune in to find out.
See you then.